Joining us now, Congressman Tim Burchett from House Foreign Affairs and former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Tom Dupree. Gentlemen, it's good to have you both on. First to you, Congressman, your reaction to that report.
Well, I'm not surprised, but the one thing I think you need to look at, too, is that the Democrats have not been briefed yet, and now they're rushing to have a Trump-appointed Attorney General as a special counsel, which will slow the investigation down, I suspect. And also, Democrats not being briefed, to me, is a huge flare sent up saying, hey, we want plausible deniability. Do not fill us in on any of this information.
So to what the congressman just said, Mr. Dupree, it's good to see you again, too. A.G. Garland is saying none of the locations Biden had these documents at were secure, including his garage in Wilmington. He held them 6 years after he left the Obama White House. NBC reports federal law enforcement officials now questioning multiple Biden aides. Is this the standard, that it's okay to lock them in your garage because you got a Corvette in there or a muscle car?
I'm going to go out on a limb, Liz, and say, no, that's not the standard. Look, what happened here is absolutely indefensible in my judgment. I am shocked that his staff, Biden's staff, would allow the president to get out there criticizing President Trump for his careless handling of documents, while at the same time, Biden himself was storing documents in his office, in his house, we now know in his garage. You would think at some point along this long road, someone would have pulled him aside and said, Mr. President, are you sure you're not guilty of the same thing?
You know, let's listen to your point. Let's listen to the press secretary getting hit with a barrage of questions, but addressing none of what we're talking about now. Watch this.
Can you shed any light on how the documents got to these places and why?
I would refer to Department of Justice or my colleagues in the counsel's office. But again, I'm just not going to go beyond what the president said. I'm not going to go beyond what the president said. I'm not going to go beyond what the president said. Again, I'm just not going to go into the particulars or the specifics of what the Department of Justice did. Again, there's an ongoing process. It's being reviewed. Don't have more to share. Again,
was it because
there is a process, an ongoing process that is occurring?
Congressman, why did the White House cover this up? Because they were discovered before, the first set were discovered before the midterms.
Absolutely. Of course, that would have played into the elections, just like Hunter Biden's laptop would. These investigative committees that Speaker is appointing will get to the bottom of this. I know James Comer and Jim Jordan are both chomping at the bit to get at this, and they should, because this just plays right into the abuse of the Justice Department that we've seen all along and several of the other alphabet agencies, and they're going to get to the bottom of it. But the problem is the timing of all this. It was clearly delayed to the public, and then this latest, they just thrown it out as soon as they've got it, and that tells you right there that they're guilty of sin on this thing by keeping it covered up around election time, and the corruption in the Justice Department. Merrick Garland needs to go. This is pathetic, and this is just another indication of that.
Yeah, Tom, what do you think of this? It's been pointed out that A.G. Garland appointed special counsel Jack Smith to investigate Mar-a-Lago on November 18th, but that was 2 weeks after Biden's family lawyers discovered on November 2nd these top-secret documents on Ukraine, Iran, the UK, in his think tank in D.C. in a closet. Then they notified National Archives. Tom, they would have then notified the DOJ, right?
Well, they sure should have. And what's so puzzling here, Liz, is that we saw with regard to President Trump that the Garland Justice Department moved so quickly with such alacrity, raiding Mar-a-Lago, getting those documents. They had a real sense of urgency. That same urgency is not apparent in what's going on right now with Biden. They've known about this for months. They haven't disclosed it. They've concealed it. And now the Justice Department finally has appointed a special counsel. But it raises the question, what took them so darn long to do this?
Yeah, what took them so long? A lot of questions, Congressman. And did the Biden family lawyers who discovered these documents, did they have national security clearances to see state secrets? Were they the same lawyers who worked on Biden family deal making? And does, things like, does attorney-client privilege in any way play into this here?
Well, they have absolute no security clearance. I can just about guarantee you that. And the interesting thing is the President of the United States is the only person who can declassify these documents, whereas what they were claiming Trump did, he did not. And then Biden obviously did not have the ability to do that as vice president, because these documents were stored or lifted back when he was the vice president under Barack Obama.
You know, so, Tom, to what the congressman is saying, Trump voters feel that Trump was railroaded, that he's getting disparate treatment. Because you see here, the Secret Service again says it checked, still cannot find any visitor logs or any records that identify the visitors to President Biden's residences in Delaware. He spent roughly a quarter of his presidency there. You know, there's fears that there's a lot of stonewalling and gaslighting and sort of cavalier recklessness on the part of the Biden family, using the government as its own private playground to make money off of and treat a nation's top secrets in such a cavalier, reckless way, where they raided Trump's Mar-a-Lago, and then there's really a lot of by the way, where is Democrat? You know, like Democrats like Schiff or Carolyn Maloney or Jerry Nadler and Eric Swalwell, where are they demanding the damage assessments? Where are the photos of these classified documents laid out on the floor as they did with Trump Mar-a-Lago?
Those are all fair questions, and I mean, really is striking when you kind of hold up and you juxtapose what happened with the Trump Mar-a-Lago raid and what has been happening or not happening with the Biden investigation. It really does seem like there's a double standard here. I think there are a lot of good questions, and I think it's very significant that we are now going to have two investigations moving ahead in parallel. We're going to have this new special counsel's investigation going on. He will be fully armed with subpoena power and the powers of the Justice Department to get to the bottom of this. At the same time, on the Hill, the congressional investigations are going to move forward. So my guess is at the end of the day, we're going to get a lot of answers to these questions that we're asking.
Listen, you know, personally, maybe I've been doing journalism for too long. I've been at it since 1986. Maybe I'm dating myself. I guess I am. But when I see the media trying to downplay this and prejudge it, right? That like, oh, there's no there. We're talking top secrets about Iran, the UK, and Ukraine, Congressman. Even Edward Snowden is now joking on Twitter, wow, even I handled classified documents more securely because I kept them encrypted. Again, who had access to Biden's garage and closet? They were inside a general suite in the think tank, where the think tank was housed in D.C. Numerous people could have accessed them. Even if it's one document, it is our nation's secrets. They are not for him to use.
Yes, ma'am. That could cost people their lives. If you've ever, maybe you have never, but I have been in briefings, and they go over some very highly sensitive things, and they list people, places, names, and dates, everything, and they could cost people their lives, and it could, and it endangers our national security. You look at what's going on with China and everything. You do not think that they had their fingers on this. You would hope they wouldn't, but due to his son's business dealings with the communist Chinese, you got to question that. You got to bring all that to the table, and all this needs to be brought out. And they keep saying transparency, but dadgummit, there's not any transparency in all this because of the delays and the stalling.
Nobody's letting Trump off the hook with Mar-a-Lago. Human intelligence sources could have been compromised there. That's the thing. That's the deal, Tom. And that's the danger here. So for anybody in the media to downplay this, it just is that this is at a hinge point for them where their credibility is at stake too, Tom. Final word.
I agree with that. And the thing that's really striking to me here, Liz, is that Joe Biden knew better. He has served in Washington for decades. He knows that he can't take classified information with him when he leaves the government, precisely for all the reasons and all the dangers that we've been mentioning.
Tom, he was chair of Senate Foreign Relations. He was in D.C. since the Nixon era. This just feels like, for now, this is a turning point. America is seeing how reckless and cavalier this president has dealt with his government job. Final word, Congressman.
The president is a liar. He is pathologically almost to that point, and he's not well. I think it's time that his party needs to look at him and say, we have got a real problem here. We need to remove him from office immediately because of the situation that has availed itself.
Congressman Burchett and Tom Dupree, thanks for joining us tonight. It's good to see you.